I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Jules Sains, that is my buddy Patrick McCray. That is my buddy Gordon Dymowski. We're here to review MacGyver Season 4, Episode 1, Secret of Parker House. So, Terry Hatcher is here as a guest star. This is not her first episode of MacGyver. She's a friend of MacGyver's, and she has inherited a mansion from her late aunt, who has been missing for a long time. And she asked MacGyver to come with her, and well, he like a good friend that he always is. He does. That's one thing. If you've ever seen this series, you learn MacGyver is a great friend to his friends and will help them no matter what. So, guys, when did you first watch the MacGyver TV show?
Well, I first watched it when it was on live because it was in production while I was in high school, and then college, and then kind of heading out of high school. So I was kind of the target market for the show, and it was on Monday nights at like about 7 Central Time. And it was meant to be just a kind of, I don't want to say it was an action adventure show, but it was also, the main gimmick was that MacGyver would, he would improvise things. He wasn't like, he didn't have gadgets. And the production team actually had researchers who would like say, okay, how do we, like in the pilot, he counters acid with some chocolate bars. And so they would research to figure out ways to get out of things. So it was like Mythbusters in reverse. They would engineer, okay, how does he get out of this one? Well, if we do this, this, and this. And you learn a lot of good, important things, like how do you turn a car muffler into a missile, into a cannon.
Yeah.
So I watched it all the way through. In fact, I remember the big thing for the final, the big final season, the thing you wanted to watch was we were going to learn MacGyver's first name.
Angus.
Yeah. Yes.
Now it's not a time to bring up your favorite kind of beef, Patrick. We're talking about MacGyver.
Well, what is he going to be? Wagyu MacGyver?
Well, nobody. The interesting thing is nobody knew because he was always called MacGyver.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like now you'd have people online going, oh, maybe his name is John, or maybe his name is MacGyver, or
Cosmo MacGyver.
But it's, and I think the great thing about this series was that it went into different there's never a typical episode. Like, he worked for a fictional Phoenix Foundation, which is basically a nonprofit that does good stuff. Back in the days when you could do a foundation that does good stuff. His boss was Pete Thornton, played by Dana Elcar, and they would do like kind of sciencey action spy stuff. You also had the occasional like MacGyver, MacGyver's friends would get him into trouble. So you have Penny Parker, you have Jack Dalton, played by Bruce McGill. The only major kind of nemesis that MacGyver had was Murdoch, who was an assassin who basically he was like evil MacGyver, played by Michael Debar, who was a rock star. He sang with the Power Station when they went on tour, but he was also an actor at that time. He was like best way to think of it is if you needed a sinister looking British guy and Adam Ant was not available, you hired Michael Debar. Okay. And it's interesting because the executive producer, Henry Winkler, I think on the first couple of seasons, one of their like script consultants was Terry Nation, who invented the Daleks for Doctor Who. So it's kind of one of those shows where it's a really nice family oriented show. There's also a lot of what I liked about it. What I like about it now is that there's not only creativity and storytelling, but like one of the types of stories it would tell is MacGyver's doing something completely different. He's like on vacation or something, and he ends up falling into trouble.
Yep.
Jewel, would you say that's an accurate description of the show?
1000%. Also, too, like he would also like when he would go on like missions, or sometimes he would even volunteer for assignments for the Phoenix Foundation. It wasn't
Mhm.
always about getting paid. Like, for example, the Boy Scouting mission he volunteered for with those troubled youths in the woods, but they said no to him. But they said, okay, now you have it, and there's only like a week left, and he goes out and helps these kids, and he builds like a makeshift airplane
Mhm.
to get them home. You also had where he went into the wilderness to do this tracking thing, and he runs into a man dressed like Bigfoot, which is a very interesting episode.
Wasn't Ted Cassidy, was it?
No,
No, it was actually Pete Thornton playing a prank.
Great. Wouldn't it be great?
You-
Bald
that-
Bigfoot.
Yeah,
And-
and for those of you at home, the entire series is on Tubi, free to watch.
Yeah.
yes, I own the whole this whole series on DVD. You can also get it on DVD at Walmart for a great price. That's where I got mine.
How
But-
much? You know,
Mine was, I think,
20
$49.99.
that's a decent price.
Yeah,
Because it's what, 8 seasons or 7?
7.
Yeah, 7.
Now, how does it remain consistent?
What do you mean by consistent?
Meaning, are the later seasons as good as the earlier seasons, or the show when it really hits its stride? Does it maintain its stride?
To me, yes, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. There's no the only time it doesn't hit its stride is when it's rebooted in the mid 2010s.
Okay, tell me about that. What did they do? What did they change?
Okay. The reboot was put on CBS because CBS is owned by the same company that owns, and they turned it into just another procedural. So you've got like all your stock characters, the
Wow.
commander, MacGyver's like the specialist. You've got the tech guy. It's not good. Don't see the reboot. Watch the original MacGyver.
What about the McGruber movie? No, I'm serious.
I have not seen the
If
I have not seen the MacGruber movie.
if you want a laugh parody of MacGyver, it's fun to watch. Because here's the thing: Richard Dean Anderson himself guest starred on SNL as
Mhm.
MacGruber's dad, dressed as MacGyver.
Well, he has a good sense of humor.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. He loved the idea of it.
And this was Richard Dean Anderson's first, I think, his first starring role after being, after working on General Hospital, where he became, he was a heartthrob. He's kind of like he's like you had Rick Springfield, and then you
He was hard
had
to hold.
Richard Dean Anderson, and then you had Anthony Geary, and then you have the guy who played Steve Hardy. So this was like his breakout role.
Yes.
So I'll tell you Richard Dean Anderson's story. True story. To sort of get an idea of what a guy he is in his regular life, and why he probably is so good at the at a role like MacGyver. He's a very inventive man. There is a really interesting acting game that the resident ensemble of the Mark Taper Forum would play, and it was called, don't get too excited by the title, Naked Prey. And in it, you have a large room that has a bunch of old furniture and rugs and trash cans and stuff to make noise and stuff like that strewn all over the room. The actors are let in blindfolded, and they're like half on one side of the room, half on the other side of the room, and all you have to do is cross from one side of the room to the other, but you have no idea what the topography is, and everyone has a Q-tip with lipstick on the end of it. And if somebody manages to get you, you're out. And the one of the guys who developed it was a guy named John Dennis, who was in charge of the resident ensemble and was Anderson's teacher. And he said Richard Dean Anderson was the single best player of that game he had ever seen. And Anderson came up with a strategy no one else had come up with. And that was he found a rug, a rolled up rug, and he put it over himself like a carapace, like a turtle would have. And then he just stuck out his hand and kind of like that as he crossed the room, and he ended up just being this engine of death. And as people tried to get him, they just got the carpet, and he made it to the other side of the room in record time and with record casualties. And the teacher said that that really was emblematic of his entire approach, which I think is great. And so that's my Richard Dean Anderson story.
So now I have a title for my upcoming biography of Richard Dean Anderson. Richard Dean Anderson, Engine of Death.
God, it's a great title.
Yeah. He also has told the story about how the reason he got into acting, his dad was stage directing at the time. And he saw his dad directing a play, and they couldn't afford an actual cake. So his dad went out and bought Hostess cupcakes. And the moment he saw that, he knew he wanted to be an actor. These actors eating these Hostess cupcakes. He said, "Hey, if I get to eat and get paid for work, I'm gonna."
That was on the back of a Marvel comic in the very early 1980s.
Really?
No. They used to have these Hostess ads.
Mm.
Do you remember that?
No.
Yeah, they for a while.
Yeah, it was like
Marvel.
you'd have Marvel and DC had some.
Did they?
Yeah, and so it would be like, okay, Spider-Man is fighting some villain, and the villain's like, okay, I'm going to destroy stuff, and Spider-Man like, yeah, have some Twinkies, or it'd be like Hulk will be about something to smash, and what do? We'll throw some fruit pies at him.
Yeah.
Dr. Doom was eating a Twinkie with a straw.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Now, in this episode, MacGyver and Penny are investigating this house. Penny believes the house is haunted. MacGyver does not believe in ghosts. I love how later in the episode he finds the secret passage. He says, "There's no such thing as ghosts. There's no such thing as ghosts." It's
a very Gilligan's Island moment.
Yes.
Gilligan,
yes.
Repeat after me. There's no such thing as ghosts.
Yeah. I think too they do a really good job with, because there's not a big cast in this episode, and they do a really great job of playing off who's in the episode. The old woman, the man who was helping Penny's aunt, Betty Parker was her name, and they were running a moonshine operation, bootlegging operation in a sense. And they found out there was lead poisoning. That's what was causing Betty's hallucinations. MacGyver figured that out.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Gordon.
Yeah, it's kind of that 80s trope of, okay, we think that in a non-horror piece of fiction where, okay, it's we know this person is going kind of acting strangely, but it turns out there's a rational explanation. And MacGyver is always about the rational, the scientific, the logical.
Yeah. I think that's a great thing too with the Bigfoot episode. He doesn't try to panic too much about it. He tries to rationalize it throughout the whole episode. And he's trying to remain calm because there's a young female he runs into. He's trying to help her too. I know we'll get into that eventually, but this episode here, again, you're dwelling off the fear of, is the house haunted? So the writers do a really good job of writing this episode of, it feels like a sort of weird, I don't think it's a nod to DS, but it feels like it is a bit. And I love the fact that they have a secret passage, a secret room, the basement, and you get, because the moonshine distillery is causing the house to shake and all that stuff, which is really cool effect. They set it in a small town, and of course, why not? Small town has ghosts supposedly, and they set this actually on Halloween, the episode, which is a lot of fun. Because I like how the one lady answers the door in a mask. She's like, "Oh, I thought you were trick-or-treaters."
Yeah, never mind that both MacGyver and Penny are like clearly older than kids.
Yes, yes.
Halloween has a wonderfully atmospheric quality.
Yeah.
And I think that, it's good to see that maximized.
Yes. What's you guys' favorite scene in this episode? You got one?
I think at the end when you see there's a gazebo with an exposed, and the sheriff is in the car with the with the reconstructed head, and I'll get into that in a moment. Where it falls onto the car and pins the sheriff, and I like it because at the end there's the tag of, oh, maybe her ghost was present after all. But you've just had an explosion in the basement of this house. The whole property is shaking.
Yep.
And it would be something that would happen logically. So it's not something you could go, it's not in the 80s. In shows like this during this time, there was the stock, is it supernatural? We don't know. Ooh, this isn't it.
Yeah.
And funny enough, that there's a scene where they find a skull, and MacGyver is taking like pencil erasers and reconstructing the skull facially. That science was just starting to come out in the public at the same time.
Yeah.
So it was, it's not really science fiction, but it's a nice little nod to the fact that it wasn't. They had they had people doing the research to be able to go like, okay, we're going to throw this in, or it's it kind of reminds me of Leverage, which is about a group of criminals pulling cons. And the way they would develop episodes during that series and right now during the revival is, I always thought it was like, okay, we're going to do, okay, let's do house scam, let's do medical. The writers were doing the research and they were like, hey, I did all this research on X. And the showrunner will go, okay, write that. So, which is what I like about MacGyver, is that you see that there's at least if there's a good idea, yeah, let's use that.
And to add this too, they had a lot of notable guest stars throughout the series.
Mm-hmm.
You had Robert Englund, Jackie Earle Haley appears in an episode. I mean, just a bunch of people.
You had Nana Visitor.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She's in one, because I think she's in one of the Murdoch episodes.
I believe so.
Let's see. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those interesting. Like MacGyver is like, if you're expecting, it's nice in this world of like, where every single show you either have to love it to death or you hate it, or it's like, and you have to invest so much into the lore. It's nice to have just a show where you can just you can just lay back, enjoy an episode, and go, yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. And even like with when we do the next episode, the one after this one where he goes back home to Minnesota, that's a really good sort of origin episode of why MacGyver became MacGyver in a lot of ways. But he was always somebody who valued life over killing. And it fits. It's a great written episode, and Richard Dean Anderson just sells the hell out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like when you consider that at the time, like the only other major action shows that I remember, and I respect the producer behind them, were usually Stephen J. Cannell productions. And I know it sounds like a damning of faint praise, but that guy knew how to put together really cool shows. But yeah, this is a what? Yeah, MacGyver is just, it's a fun show, and it's nostalgia proof.
Yes, it's a lot of fun to watch too. It's something I usually try to watch throughout the summer. Pop in the DVDs and throw them in. There are a lot of fun episodes too. It's not boring. It's very entertaining. And MacGyver does go on these crazy adventures. And sometimes they involve family members too. His grandfather, Harry Jackson, I think it was his name. And really, really fun episodes. I love when he's coaching the young hockey team too. Because he's trying to show, look, this is about teamwork, not just individualism. Mm-hmm. So there's always a nice lesson in some of these episodes.
Yeah, I'm the least familiar with the show, but I mean, I knew about it when it was on, and I knew about the Swiss Army knife, and I saw snippets from episodes when I could, and it always struck me as a very smart show. For as much fun as it is, from an engineering point of view and so on. Richard Dean Anderson always looks like he's having a good time, which to me really means a lot in terms of being able to enjoy something. and it certainly has one of the catchiest themes. Back when we had those, when we were
Yeah.
allowed those in television. I ask you just sort of a vaguely unrelated question, but I think an important one. Do you miss the old way that TV shows started?
Yes.
Meaning with a
Yes.
theme and a montage of what was going on. What happened? Where did those things go? What was the cultural twist that expunged them from our screens and airwaves?
I don't know what expunged them. I'll say this with MacGyver specifically, because they always didn't start. Sometimes they didn't automatically start with the theme. They would have what was called an opening gambit, like a
Sure, yeah, yeah.
a short
The
story.
teaser.
Yes, and then they would do the theme. Now, did they always do that? No. Eventually, they stopped the gambits and opened with the theme. That's a part of the show that makes it so unique. It sometimes, yes, early they would build up to the theme, but then later on they don't. But the theme is so iconic.
Yeah.
You know what that theme is from easily.
So like,
Yeah,
you know,
I think in terms of I think there are two things primarily. I think part of it is I would say that shift started from my perspective around the early 2000s when you saw a lot more people on cable where you weren't necessarily guaranteed a certain amount of time where you maybe weren't necessarily guaranteed immediacy or having the time. You wanted to go straight to the episode. So it's like something like I'm thinking of the theme to House MD, where they took a song from Massive Attack. They took like the first 15 seconds, the second 15 seconds, and just slammed them together.
interesting.
I think. Go ahead.
No, the first show I recall doing that was Lost,
Mm-hmm.
and I wish it'd be found.
Yeah.
But where the theme song was, and that was it.
Yeah, I think it's basically the idea is let's just get straight to the story. The other, and I think it's commingling, is that once producers and networks realized that people were fast forwarding to the commercials because they were recording or they cut them out, what would happen is you'd have companies sponsor product placement within the episode. So like if you watch Leverage, old school Leverage from the late 2000s, they're driving a lot of Hyundais because they were a sponsor.
Okay.
If you watch, I've been rewatching Elementary, and you can see where there's a lot of Microsoft products, like very pointedly, here's a Surface, and it's pointing to Windows 8 or whatever, because they were a sponsor. Part of the reason why in House MD, Hugh Laurie was always sending people to get the MRI. GE was an unofficial sponsor. They paid for product placement. So, and I think that had a knock-on effect because, okay, we want to get to the story quickly. We don't want them to cut out that intro. So you make the intro shorter and shorter and shorter. I think though, a lot of show intros usually they provide that kind of old school, provides easy access for someone who's going to start watching.
Right.
It also provides, I think, a little bit of a relief because you're not going straight into a story. It's like if you look at Elementary, there's actually two intros. There's like a very complicated Rube Goldberg one where you get the full cast. And then there's one where it's like a little 10-second snippet of the main theme where it's just the title against the New York City skyline. And I think that's just, with the economics of and the practicalities of network television and streaming television in general, you don't want to necessarily waste any time. You just want to get straight to the content.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But that's just my theory. I could be wrong.
Theme song here written by Dennis McCarthy, who wrote the music to V, wrote a lot of the Star Trek: The Next Generation music and the DS9 music.
Yeah.
He's a good composer. He only did one film, which was Star Trek Generations, and I think he said something like he later regretted not taking more risks You know, I think McCarthy's one of those guys. He's sort of like the Jack Hill of music in that he's very good at doing things on kind of a not quite the John Williams echelon. And I think he sort of got stuck in that. But wow, the guy creates a catchy melody, and this is an example of it. So I got that.
Mm-hmm.
What's your top 3 favorite TV themes?
I'm going to exclude Dark Shadows, even though that's a favorite, because I think that's a little too obvious.
Right.
I would say Doctor Who, because that is, it's not only just weird, but when it was originally produced by the BBC, it was basically made by clipping electronic sounds together. So it really does sound otherworldly. I would say second one would be Get Smart.
Oh
Because
God, that's a great
because I love it's both it's maybe one of the few TV themes that satirizes the kind of theme to that kind of show.
Yeah.
And I think thirdly, and this is going to sound this may sound a little weird, but Green Acres, because it's just so.
Oh God, the fuzzy guitar, Vic Mizzy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vic Mizzy was a genius.
And as soon as you can't discuss the lyrics without automatically singing them. You know, you can't just say Green Acres is the place to be. You have to start singing, and you have to have that farm. You have to have that Eddie Albert voice break on Farm.
Well, living it, yeah.
Patrick, what's yours?
Well, okay, I got 3, and 2 I'll tell you what they are. The third one I will perform for you, and you have to guess what it is. So I would say The Prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
Hell of a theme. Theme. Man from Uncle.
Nice.
And then this is the third one.
60 Minutes.
60 Minutes. Yeah. And there were lyrics written for that too. So the producer could get half the money every time it was played at a bar or something like that.
Ironically, theme to The Prisoner, theme to Doctor Who, written by the same guy.
Was it Laurie Johnson?
I know.
Ron Grainer. Ron
Grainer.
Who did the music to Omega Man.
Mm-hmm.
And a hell of a score there. Wow.
Yeah. Mine would be, let's see, Airwolf.
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Deep Space Nine and MacGyver. That would be my third.
It's very,
yeah.
Good stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tell you, television used to be wackier.
Yeah.
We had a good time before somebody took our buildings away. And I really mean that. And TV used to be so much fun. I mean, I wanted to go into television. As a kid, I got real lucky, and I wound up in office meetings at Disney, talking about a career in, like, I was in high school, and we were talking about a career in TV, and I'm kind of glad it didn't happen, because in the words of Van Dyke Parks, I wasn't made for these times. There's no way I would be happy in television now. Not at all.
Yeah, and I think there were, I think, a couple forces that I think shaped to where we are now. Okay. I think part of it is you had, you had, like, it's usually some concerned parents who are like, oh, why should our kids not say that? Not, we can't show this to our kids. I mean, part of the reason why the Wild Wild West was canceled.
Oh God, Wild Wild West, that's a theme.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
Was that it wasn't because of ratings, because it was doing well in the ratings. It was because Congress was looking at violence on television, and they were like, the network was like, okay, maybe we should do this before we get in trouble. Yeah. When in the 80s, Reagan had basically deregulated children's television. So you had shows like G.I. Joe, Transformers.
Big toy
Not my
heads.
shows because I'm a little too old for that demographic. But then mothers come in, parents come in with, you're just showing our kids commercials all day. And it's like, at some point you have to go, let the kids be kids. And I think I think the biggest trend I would say over with the rise of cable and now streaming is that you can now program to very specific tastes.
Yeah.
You can really, so it's no longer like when you had, when Patrick and I were kids, back in the before MacGyver, you had maybe five channels that were your major networks, PBS, and you had to work to get on those. Then you had VHS, you had local channels where they were looking where you could throw the stuff that was syndicated there, and so you had to really kind of, if you wanted something that dealt with you that you liked, you had to kind of work at finding it.
No, sure, you had to hunt for it. I mean, that's why I feel like, I say this vaingloriously, we are the noble Dark Shadows generation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because we had to hunt it down, and Dark Shadows, as much as it lived for us in little half-hour segments of reality, it also has lived and thrived more in our minds.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, my time away from Dark Shadows was far more than my time with it. And that's why I think there's sort of two Dark Shadows. There's the sort of the really romantic epic that I hear, and then what we see.
Mm-hmm. And I also think a lot of it too now is that the way we relate to media, I think, has become a little too. We start to. I think part of it's nostalgia, but we it's almost like we forget. We think we own what we enjoy, versus owning our feelings about it. Let me give you a perfect example. Doctor Who, the recent series of Doctor Who, both of the Disney-led ones, they had some good episodes, some real stinkers, and the both series season finales, including this recent one, you could tell that it was basically like it went off the rails. And I have said, that, in fact, at this last season ender, I said, you know what, I can forgive the previous showrunner, because the showrunner, Russell T Davies, who ran these two seasons on Disney, actually ran it for the reboot. And as soon as I make comics, there are people like, "Well, I like it, and there's some really good episodes." It's like you have to sort out if an episode does not. You can like an episode that does not work. To bring up an individual that I brought up before, there are people who think The Room is this classic of bad cinema, and it's not. It's just bad cinema.
Yeah.
But it's almost like, how dare you criticize this thing that I like, and not in an edgelord kind of trolling. Not in that way, but the episode does not work when you make your when you bring back a character who's meant to be a a man who had such a strong will that as his body decayed, all he had was his will, and you turn him into a giant infant skull baby. And I'm not. If you feel like I've spoiled the ending of Doctor Who, folks, yeah, it's deliberate. I am being mean. It is that bad. And you kind of go, and Davies' response was, it's not like Omega. It's not like this character in the past. There's the Time War. We change things, and you kind of go, no, it's just bad writing is bad writing. And I think fandom as a whole, I think, when you look at, say, I think there's three levels of appreciating a show. There's the kind of basic, hey, it's fun to watch, I can enjoy it. There's that middle ground of, okay, I enjoy it, I can see more in it, but I really appreciate it. And so I can be honest about its faults. Dark Shadows is not a perfect show. MacGyver is not a perfect show.
Right.
And then you've got that higher level of people who are just like, you read way too much into it, and there's no perspective. Like I've had conversations with grown men over 40 who are talking about live action Saturday morning shows of the 70s. And it's like, oh, that was really good science fiction. And I'm like,
Well,
no,
no,
that was
no, it wasn't.
no,
No.
no, no. Maybe Land of the Lost. Okay, we can talk about that separately because there were professional writers on it. We can have that discussion, but not everything is good. A lot of that stuff. Um, it's funny, Joel, because you did the movie The Monster Squad.
Yes.
2 years before, there's actually a TV series called The Monster Squad with Fred Grandy.
Oh,
That
wow.
show is on Tubi, and I'm warning both of you. I watched an episode because I used to watch it when I was a kid.
What was on Tubi?
Monster Squad, the
Monster
show
Squad, yeah.
with Fred Grandy,
Oh
and
yeah,
he invents his computer, and there are these wax things of Dracula.
yeah. I
Don't
remember
watch it.
that.
It's not good.
It's
Don't
not.
watch it, Joel.
It's
And
not.
Joel, stick with the movie. The movie is the best version of that story ever.
Yeah. Well, I think here's the thing too. Like, I don't know, like, why Universal's having such trouble with the whole dark universe concept thing. To me, the
Movie
monster.
was bad.
Well, to me, as a viewer, the Monster Squad's the closest thing we got to a perfect dark universe movie.
And
In a
that you can.
sense.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but you can just leave it there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
Yeah.
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 that is the best iteration of that idea. You don't.
Yeah.
And the Universal Dark Universe was they were thinking, okay, we've got all these characters. Let's think this out and put together this thing from day one.
Yeah.
Versus, okay, you do one film and you do another film and another film, and okay, how do we bring these three films together?
Yep.
Yeah.
The interesting thing there, because I was thinking as you were talking about this, there's not a lot that's logical that I give a damn about to cohere these characters to bond them together, because most of them don't. They when they really get going, there's just they're pretty uncontrollable, and so you have to I think uh, look at how uncontrollable they're going to be, or can you give them some sort of ability to pause and articulate themselves reasonably? But I thought of something that would bring them together, and I don't know how I would do it. This is going to sound so goofy. I'm sorry, but it would be friendship and the desire to not be alone, because I think that is something that they almost all have in common, is misunderstood, the isolation that results because of that, and the general paranoia that the public's going to show up and set them on fire. Certainly Creature from the Black Lagoon has that. Wolfman has that. Frankenstein's monster has that. Those are that seems to be the most frequent, I think, motif that runs through those. And so then you juxtapose them with someone like Dracula or Imhotep, and what is he doing? How are they relating to the other guys?
Yeah.
As weird as that sounds, the other guys is the Creature in the Black Lagoon, but it's true.
I wouldn't mind that idea. I also wouldn't mind that if they go that route and you
Well, they're
have
not.
you have the wolf man who, again, part man, who turns into a werewolf when the full moon, and he doesn't. When you watch Monster Squad, what's he do? He phones the police detective. He's gonna kill your son. He's aware of what he is. He just doesn't want to be it. That is something that is so missed in a lot of werewolf movies.
What, a conscience?
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
You're right. You're right.
It's something I'd like to see again done, where the Wolfman is aware of Dracula. He knows he exists. And he's like trying to warn people, this guy's going to kill you.
Yeah.
that Dracula. That was the first time. That was the Dracula I was introduced to as a kid. Monster Squad's Dracula, and when he throws that dynamite, meeting adjourned, walks away. I'm like, this dude's scary as shit.
It was Duncan Reger.
Yeah.
Who is a really fine visual artist. He's a fine like printmaker, painter.
Great actor.
Yeah. Now he was on V with music by Dennis McCarthy, and Jeff Yager, who was on V, who played Lane Smith's son, Kyle Bates, the boyfriend to the disturbingly young star child. He had the rights to Greg Mank's book on Karloff and Lugosi. And he was obsessed with playing, I think, Karloff. And he really carried the ball for that for a long time, and it never materialized for him. No. Trivia.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you guys want to add about this episode before we go?
No, but I really want to see this next one, though.
Yeah.
When are we doing that?
We can do it tomorrow if you want to.
I have no objection.
I have no objection either.
Okay. So, yeah, tomorrow we'll do, I think it's a Blood Brothers it's called?
Yes, it's season 4, episode 2. It's the next one after this.
Yep.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Yes.
I would seek out on YouTube Steve Shives and maybe MacGyver or the name of this episode, and put a link to Shives' sort of spoken essay about it, maybe at the end of this one, because I think it's inspiring and it's informative to hear the episode. So I think so well depicted and editorialized on. It kind of tells you what to watch for.
Yeah. I'll try to locate it on YouTube, and I'll not only, if I find it, I'll not only leave it in this video, but tomorrow night's video too.
Okay, great, sure.
Yeah. There's also going to be a link to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Day book Unbound. If you haven't picked it up already, pick it up, and a link to Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page. You guys have a great night. Be safe.
Good night.
Good night.